They say revenge is a dish best served cold, but they never tell you how long it takes for that dish to freeze. How many nights you spend alone perfecting the recipe. How many times you taste the bitterness before it transforms into something else entirely. 6 years. That's how long it took. 6 years of silence. 6 years of building. 6 years of becoming someone they would never recognize. And on a Tuesday morning in March, I walked back into the world that had destroyed me, carrying an empire they never saw coming. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Every great fall begins with a height you never should have climbed to. And mine? Mine started in a coffee shop that smelled like burnt espresso and broken dreams. My name is Victoria Grace Chen, and 7 years ago, I was a 8-year-old nobody working 3 jobs and drowning in student loan debt from an engineering degree I couldn't seem to monetize. The Java Junction on Lexington Avenue wasn't the worst place I had ever worked, but it was close. The espresso machine leaked, the owner screamed at us in broken English, and the tips barely covered my subway fare. But it was a job, and in New York City in 2018, that meant something. It was November 14th, I remember, because it was my mother's birthday, 3 years after she had passed from ovarian cancer. I was working the closing shift, and the rain was coming down in sheets, the kind of rain that makes you question every life choice that led you to this moment. The bell above the door chimed at 9:47 p.m. We closed at 10, and I was ready to flip that sign and go home to my studio apartment in Queens where the heat only worked half the time. He walked in like a man fleeing something. Soaked to the bone, his cheap suit clinging to a frame that was too thin, carrying a leather messenger bag that had seen better days. But it was his eyes that caught me, dark, intelligent, desperate in a way that felt familiar. "We're about to close," I said, not unkindly. "Please." His voice cracked. "I have been walking for 2 hours. I just need something warm and a place to sit for a few minutes. I'll pay double." There was something about desperation that I recognized. Maybe because I had been wearing it like a second skin for years. "One coffee?" "Black? Black is perfect." He smiled, and for a moment, the desperation lifted. "You're an angel." "I'm really not," I said, but I poured him the coffee anyway. The good stuff from the French press we saved for ourselves, not the burnt swill from the industrial machine. He sat at the corner table, pulling out a laptop that was held together with duct tape. I should have been cleaning, but something made me watch him. The way he typed frantically, then stopped, running his hands through wet hair. The way he had stared at the screen like it held the answers to questions he was afraid to ask. At 10:15, I flipped the sign and started the closing procedures. He was still there, still typing. "Hey," I said gently, "I really do have to close." He looked up, and I saw something I had never seen in another person's eyes before, the exact moment someone realizes they have reached the end of their rope. "I'm sorry," he said, closing the laptop. I didn't know where else to go." "Rough day." He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Rough year." "Rough 5 years, actually." I should have let him leave, should have locked the door behind him and gone home. But my mother always said I had a bleeding heart for broken things. "Want to talk about it?" I found myself asking. His name was Derek Castellano, and he was 31 years old, with the kind of failure that either destroys you or forges you into something unbreakable. He had been a prodigy, once graduated MIT at 20 with degrees in computer science and business. Worked at Google for 2 years before the entrepreneurial bug bit him. He had started 3 companies. All 3 had failed spectacularly. The first one was a social media platform for pet owners, he said, and I couldn't tell if he was laughing or crying. Raised $500K in seed funding, burned through it in 8 months. Turned out people just use regular social media for their pets. The second, a delivery drone company. This was 2015, before anyone really figured out the regulations. FAA shut us down before we could even do a proper test flight. Lost $2 million of other people's money. And the third? His jaw tightened. The third was going to work. I knew it would work. AI-powered personal financial management. Machine learning algorithms that would predict and prevent poor financial decisions before users made them. It was brilliant. The tech was solid. The beta testing was incredible. What happened? My co-founder stole the code and sold it to a competitor for $15 million. He's living in the Bahamas now. I'm living in a studio apartment in Bushwick with 2 roommates and $340,000 in personal debt. I sat down across from him. I'm sorry. Don't be. It's my fault. I trusted the wrong person. I always do. He looked at me then, really looked at me. You know what the worst part is? I have one more idea, one more shot, and it's the best idea I have ever had. But no one will fund me. No one will even take a meeting with me. I'm 31 years old, and in Silicon Valley, I'm a walking cautionary tale. Tell me the idea, I said. He hesitated. Why? Because I'm curious, and because you look like you need to tell someone. So he told me. The idea was called quantum flow, a revolutionary approach to cloud computing that would use quantum-inspired algorithms to optimize data processing speeds. He explained it in terms I barely understood, drawing diagrams on napkins, his eyes lighting up with the kind of passion you can't fake. Traditional cloud computing is hitting its limits, he said. Moore's law is dying. We need a paradigm shift. Quantum flow wouldn't be true quantum computing that's still decades away from being commercially viable. But it would use quantum principles to create hybrid systems that are 10,000 times faster than current solutions. How much would it cost to build? Initial development? $300,000. That would get us a working prototype, initial patents, and enough runway to approach serious VCs. I thought about the envelope hidden in my apartment, the one I had been carrying since my mother's estate had finally settled. $287,000 from her life insurance policy money she had paid into for 30 years, working double shifts as a nurse, all so I could have a future. What would you do if you had the money? I asked. I would change the world, he said simply. Or I would fail trying, but at least I had fail on my own terms. I should have walked away. Any sane person would have walked away. I have money, I heard myself say. He blinked. What? $287,000. My mother's life insurance. It's just sitting in an account because I'm too afraid to touch it, too afraid to disappoint her ghost by using it wrong. I can't. I'm not offering yet, I interrupted. But I want to hear more. A real pitch. Numbers, projections, timelines. Everything. Why would you even consider this? I looked at this stranger, this 3-time failure with one more dream, and I saw something I recognized. A person who refused to give up even when the world was telling them to. Because my mother spent her whole life playing it safe, and she died at 54, never having lived a single day of the life she actually wanted. She left me money for a future, but what if she wanted me to build a future worth having? Derek stared at me for a long moment. Then he extended his hand across the table. Derek Castellano. And if you're serious about this, I promise you won't regret it. I shook his hand. Victoria Chen. And don't make promises you can't keep. The next 3 weeks were a blur of late-night meetings, due diligence that I barely understood, and a growing certainty that I was either making the best decision of my life or the stupidest. Derek lived up to his promise of a real pitch. He showed me everything: technical specifications, market analysis, competitive landscape, go-to-market strategy. He had been working on this for 2 years, refining it in the margins of his life while delivering food for Uber Eats and teaching coding boot camps. Why quantum flow? I asked during one of our meetings at a 24-hour diner in the East Village. Why not just get a regular job, rebuild your credit, try again in a few years? He looked at me like I had suggested he stop breathing. Because this is my shot, Victoria. I'm 31. In tech years, I'm ancient. If I don't do this now, I never will. I will become one of those guys who talks about the startup I almost built at dinner parties for the rest of my life. I had rather be homeless than be that guy. There was something magnetic about his certainty. Something intoxicating about being around someone who wanted something so badly they were willing to sacrifice everything for it. I had never been that person. I had always been practical, cautious, afraid. My mother raised me to be safe, to have backup plans for my backup plans. But safety hadn't made me happy. It had made me a 28-year-old barista with an engineering degree, too afraid to take risks. On December 3rd, 2018, I transferred $287,000 to an LLC we had formed, Castellano Technologies. Derek cried when he saw the bank confirmation. Actually cried, tears running down his face in the tiny office space we had rented in Brooklyn, a 400 square foot room above a bodega that smelled like cat food and ambition. I'll make you proud, he said, his voice thick. I swear to God, Victoria, I'll make this worth it. Just make it work, I said. That's all I need. But it wasn't all I needed. Because somewhere in those 3 weeks of meetings and planning and dreaming, something had shifted between us. Something neither of us was ready to name. The first 6 months were brutal. Derek worked 18-hour days, coding until his eyes bled, reaching out to every contact he had ever made. I kept my jobs, all 3 of them, because $287,000 sounds like a lot until you realize how fast it disappears in tech development. We fought constantly those first months, about spending priorities, about hiring decisions, about whether to patent the core technology now or wait until we had more funding. We need to protect the IP immediately, I argued during one particularly heated debate in month 3. Patents are expensive and public, Derek countered. The moment we file, everyone knows what we're building. We need to stay stealth until we have something worth stealing. Like your last company? The words were out before I could stop them. Derek's face went pale, then hard. That was low. I'm sorry, I'm scared, Derek. This is everything I have. His anger melted into something softer. I know. It's everything I have, too. We're in this together, remember? Together. That word carried more weight every day. We celebrated our first breakthrough in March 2019, a working proof of concept that showed our quantum-inspired algorithms could process data 2,000 times faster than traditional methods. It wasn't the 10,000x we had promised, but it was enough to start approaching investors. That night, Derek opened a bottle of cheap champagne in our tiny office. To Victoria Chen, he toasted. The only person crazy enough to believe in me. To Derek Castellano, I replied. The only person stubborn enough to make me believe. We drank straight from the bottle, laughing like idiots, high on possibility and exhaustion in something we still weren't naming. Can I ask you something? Derek said after a while. Anything. Why did you really invest in me? The truth. I thought about lying, about giving him the easy answer, about believing in the technology or seeing potential. But we had been through too much for comfortable lies. Because when I looked at you that night in the coffee shop, I saw someone who reminded me of my mother. She spent her whole life being afraid to quit jobs she hated, afraid to travel, afraid to take chances. And then she got sick, and suddenly there was no more time for someday. I didn't want to be her. I wanted to be brave. You made me feel brave. Derek was quiet for a long time. Then he reached across the gap between us and took my hand. You're the bravest person I know. That was the first night we kissed. And the night everything got infinitely more complicated. We told ourselves it would be just that one time. A release of tension, a celebration, a moment of weakness. But the next week, it happened again. And again. By April, we had stopped pretending it wasn't happening. By May, I had moved out of my studio in Queens and into his place in Bushwick. We became a couple in the way people do when they're building something together, when the line between professional and personal becomes so blurred it ceases to exist. My sister Diane called it reckless. You invested your life savings in a guy you barely know, and now you're sleeping with him? She said during one of our monthly lunch dates in Manhattan. Vicky, do you hear yourself? What happens when this implodes? Diane was 2 years younger than me, but had always acted older. She was beautiful in the way that requires expensive highlights, personal trainer, a closet full of designer clothes she somehow afforded on a marketing coordinator's salary. We had never been particularly close, but she was family, and family was supposed to look out for each other. It's not going to implode, I said. They always do, Vicky. You're mixing business and romance. It's literally the first rule of entrepreneurship: don't sleep with your co-founder. He's not my co-founder. I'm an investor. Are you? She raised a perfectly shaped eyebrow. Because from where I'm sitting, you're working 60 hours a week on this company, you're living with him, and you're emotionally invested in a way that's going to destroy you when this falls apart. Why are you so sure it's going to fall apart? Because it always does. Men like Derek, charming, ambitious, desperate, they use people. They don't mean to. Maybe. But they do. I should have listened to her. Should have heard the warning bells. But I was 28 years old and in love for the first time in my life, high on the possibility of building something that mattered. Thanks for lunch, Diane, I said, standing. But I have got to get back to work. Lug. She grabbed my wrist. Vicky, I'm serious. Protect yourself. Get everything in writing. Make sure you have legal protections. Promise me. I promise. I lied. By August 2019, We had our first major investor meeting, a Series A pitch to Redwood Ventures, a mid-tier VC firm that specialized in infrastructure tech. Derek practiced his pitch 100 times. I quizzed him on technical questions, stress-tested his financial projections, role-played every possible objection. The night before the meeting, he couldn't sleep. "What if they say no?" he whispered in the darkness of our bedroom. "Then we find someone else. We're running out of money, Vic. We have maybe 2 months of runway left. If this doesn't work, it will work. And if it doesn't, we'll figure something out. We always do." He rolled over to face me. "How are you so calm?" "Because I stopped being afraid the day I invested in you. Whatever happens, we're in this together." "Together," he repeated, like it was a prayer. The pitch went perfectly. Derek was brilliant, confident without being arrogant, knowledgeable without being condescending. He answered every technical question, addressed every concern about his past failures with brutal honesty. "I have failed 3 times, he told the partners, and I learned something crucial each time. I learned that passion isn't enough without execution. I learned that partnerships require legal protections and aligned incentives. I learned that timing matters as much as technology. Quantum Flow has all 3, and this time, I have a partner who won't let me fail." He looked at me when he said it, and I felt something shift in the room. 2 weeks later, Redwood Ventures offered us $5 million at a $15 million valuation. We had done it. We were real. The next 18 months were a masterclass in exponential growth. With real funding, we hired a team of 7 brilliant engineers who believed in the vision. We moved into a proper office space in Manhattan. We filed patents on our core technology. We signed our first corporate customer, a mid-sized financial services firm that needed faster data processing. The revenue was modest at first, $300,000 in our first year, but it was enough to validate the technology. Enough to start approaching bigger fish. Derek was the face of the company, but I was the engine. While he pitched and networked and charmed investors, I built the actual systems. I hired the team. I negotiated the contracts. I kept the books balanced and the lights on. We were partners in every sense of the word. "You know what we need?" Derek said one night in March 2020, right as COVID was starting to shut the world down. "A rebrand. Castellano Technologies sounds like a consulting firm. We need something that captures what we're actually building." "Like what?" "Like quantum systems, flow tech, something that sounds like the future." "How about we keep it simple?" I suggested. CT Quantum. Clean, professional, memorable. CT Quantum, he repeated, testing the words. "I like it, though technically the CT should stand for both of us. Castellano and Chen, you want to put my name on the company?" "Why wouldn't I? You built this as much as I did." "But we didn't change the paperwork." Derek was listed as CEO and sole founder. I was listed as an early employee with stock options. It made sense at the time. He was the face, the visionary. I was support. I should have pushed back. Should have demanded equity commensurate with my contributions. But I trusted him, and I loved him. And I thought we were building a future together. So what did titles matter? The breakthrough came in September 2020. We'd been working on a contract with the Department of Defense, a small pilot program to test our technology for secure communications. It was a long shot, a Hail Mary that I'd spent months pursuing while Derek focused on commercial clients. The DoD contract hit, $15 million over 3 years. That single contract changed everything. Suddenly we weren't a promising startup. We were a legitimate government contractor with clearance-level technology. Our valuation skyrocketed. Series B funding came easily, $30 million, led by Maverick Capital, one of the top-tier VC firms in the country. By December 2020, CT Quantum was valued at $200 million. We had made it. Against all odds, against all the failures and setbacks, we had actually made it. Derek proposed to me on New Year's Eve, 2020, on the roof of our new apartment in Tribeca. An apartment we could actually afford now. "Victoria Grace Chen," he said, kneeling in the snow with a ring I knew cost more than my mother's entire annual salary. "You saved my life. You believed in me when no one else would. You built this empire with me. Will you marry me?" I said yes through tears. We agreed to wait until after the IPO to actually get married. There was too much work to do, too many deadlines. But we were engaged. We were partners. We were building a future together, or so I thought. The cracks started small. In January 2021, Derek hired a new chief operating officer, Marcus Webb, a slick Harvard MBA with an impressive resume and a handshake that felt like a threat. We need professional management as we scale, Derek explained. Marcus has taken 3 companies public. He's exactly what we need. Did you run this by me? You were in DC meeting with the DOD. I had to make a decision. We're supposed to make major decisions together. And we do. But Vic, you're spread too thin. You're managing operations, engineering, contracts, finance. We need to delegate. He was right. I was exhausted. But something about Marcus made my skin crawl. Marcus immediately started implementing changes. New organizational charts, new reporting structures, new processes that seemed designed to push me further from the center of decision-making. It's just professional growth, Derek assured me when I raised concerns. Every startup goes through this. The scrappy phase has to end eventually. In March, I discovered that Derek had given Marcus equity 2% of the company, vested over 4 years. 2% that came from diluting my shares without consulting me. It's standard, Derek said when I confronted him. C-level executives get equity. That's how this works. But my equity hasn't increased even though I've been running half this company. Because you're already well compensated. You have options. Options aren't the same as ownership, Derek. Vic, don't make this a thing. We're about to go public. You're going to make millions regardless. Isn't that enough? It should have been enough. But it felt like something was slipping away, something I couldn't quite name. Derek started traveling more investor meetings in San Francisco, partnership negotiations in London, speaking engagements at conferences I had never heard of. When he was home, he was distant, always on his phone, always networking, always too tired to talk about the things we used to talk about. We should set a wedding date, I said one night in May 2021. After the IPO, he said, without looking up from his laptop. I promise, Vic, once we're public and things calm down, we will plan the wedding. Things aren't going to calm down after the IPO. They're going to get crazier. Then we'll deal with it together. Like we always do. But we weren't dealing with things together anymore. I was managing the day-to-day operations while Derek played the role of visionary CEO. I was in the office until midnight while he was at galas and fundraisers with people whose names I recognized from Forbes lists. My sister Diane started coming around more. She had landed a job at a marketing firm in Manhattan, and suddenly we were having lunch weekly instead of monthly. How are things with Derek? She would ask, and there was something in her tone I couldn't quite place. Fine. Busy. You know how it is. Do I? She would smile in a way that didn't reach her eyes. From where I'm sitting, it looks like you're working yourself to death while he takes all the credit. That's not fair. Derek built this company. Did he? Or did you build it while he took the applause? You don't understand how startups work, Diane. Maybe not. But I understand how relationships work. And yours looks like it's on life support. I would change the subject. Every time. Because admitting she might be right meant admitting I had made a terrible mistake. CT Quantum went public on the 15th of August 2021. The IPO priced at $28 per share, valuing the company at $2.3 billion. By the end of the first day of trading, we had closed at $41, a 46% pop that made headlines across the tech world. Derek rang the opening bell at NASDAQ, and his face was on CNBC, Bloomberg, and the Wall Street Journal. The comeback kid, they called him. The entrepreneur who failed 3 times before building a quantum computing empire. I watched from the floor, in the crowd of employees and investors, as Derek gave interviews about his vision, his persistence, his refusal to give up. My name was never mentioned. That night, there was a celebration at a rooftop bar in Midtown. Champagne flowed, investors congratulated themselves, and Derek gave a speech about the journey. 3 years ago, I was broken, he said to the crowd. Today, we're a public company worth billions. This is what happens when you refuse to give up on your dreams, when you find the right people to believe in you. He looked at me when he said, the right people, and smiled. But it felt empty, performative. My stock options were worth $8.3 million on paper. Life-changing money, more than my mother had earned in her entire life. But the victory felt hollow. I found Derek alone on the terrace around 11 p.m., looking out at the city. Congratulations, I said, handing him a glass of champagne. Congratulations to you too. You're a millionaire, Vic. Multiple times over. When do you want to set a wedding date? He took a long sip of champagne. Let's give it a few months. Let the dust settle. I want to be able to focus on us, not on lockup periods and analyst calls. You've been saying a few months for a year, Derek. And I mean it. After Q4 earnings are out, we'll take time off. We'll go somewhere tropical and plan the whole thing. I promise. Another promise. Another delay. Derek, I need to know, are we okay? He turned to look at me, and in his eyes, I saw something that terrified me. Uncertainty. Of course we're okay. Why would you even ask that? Because you feel a million miles away. He pulled me close, kissed my forehead. I'm right here. I'm always right here. But he wasn't. He was somewhere else, somewhere I couldn't follow. September 2021 brought my 32nd birthday. I'd been planning a quiet dinner at home, just Derek and me, a chance to reconnect. I'd bought ingredients for his favorite meal, opened a bottle of wine, even bought a dress that still had the tags on it. I had also just found out I was pregnant. The test sat in my purse. 2 pink lines that changed everything. I had planned to tell him over dinner, to make it special, to remind us both why we had fallen in love in the first place. 7 p.m. came and went. No, Derek. 8 p.m. I called. Voicemail. 9 p.m. I called again. Voicemail. At 10:47 p.m., my phone buzzed. Not a call from Derek, a text from my best friend Rachel. Vic, I'm so sorry you had to find out this way. I saw this on Instagram and thought you should know before everyone else does. Below the message was a screenshot. Instagram. A photo posted 23 minutes ago. Derek. Diane. On the steps of City Hall, kissing. The caption. Just married. When you know, you know. Number happily ever after. Number just married, number love wins. The phone slipped from my hands. Or maybe I dropped it. The sound of it hitting the marble floor we had chosen together, installed in the apartment we were supposed to share forever, was distant, muffled. The pregnancy test fell next to it, bouncing twice before settling face up, those 2 pink lines screaming up at me. I don't remember sitting down. I don't remember the tears starting. But suddenly I was on the floor, and the world was ending, and the only thought that kept cycling through my mind was, my sister. He married my sister. If you've ever sacrificed everything for someone you love, hit that subscribe button right now. Because what Victoria does next, the way she disappears, the way she rebuilds, the way she returns will make this betrayal look like just the prologue. Trust me, you're not ready. I called Diane first. Some part of me needed to hear her voice. Needed to confirm this wasn't some elaborate mistake or hack or nightmare. She answered on the first ring. Oh, Vicky. Her voice was breathy, giddy, drunk on triumph. I was going to call you myself. I wanted you to hear it from me. But Derek said we should wait until tomorrow when you'd had time to process. But I guess Instagram beat us to it. Process, I repeated numbly. Process what, Diane? Derek and I are married. I know it's a shock. It shocked us too, but when you know, you really do know. It was this whirlwind thing. We have been seeing each other for a few months, and today we just decided, why wait? Life's too short. A few months. Well, 6 months if we're being technical. It started at that IPO party, actually. You remember you were talking to those boring investor types, and Derek and I got to talking about marketing strategies for the company. He's brilliant, Vicky. Like truly brilliant. And we just connected. 6 months. Since August. Since the IPO. Since I had stood on the NASDAQ floor watching him take credit for everything we had built. You have been sleeping with my fiancé for 6 months, and you're just now telling me because Instagram forced your hand. Ex-fiancé, technically. I mean, Derek broke things off with you 2 weeks ago. He said you had agreed it wasn't working. He said what? That you had both decided to end the engagement. That it was mutual. That you were focused on your career and he was focused on his, and it made sense to go separate ways. Diane, I'm wearing his ring right now. We were supposed to have dinner tonight. For my birthday. Which you forgot, apparently. Silence on the other end. Then, oh my God. Is today your birthday? Vicky, I'm so sorry. I have been so wrapped up in wedding planning. Well, I guess the wedding already happened, but I meant to call wedding planning. For 6 months, you have been planning to marry my fiancé, and it never occurred to you to mention it to me, because I knew you would react like this. Her voice shifted from apologetic to defensive. You would make it all about you, about how I'm betraying you, about how Derek was yours first. But Vicky, the truth is, Derek and I, we're better suited. We move in the same circles. We understand each other's ambitions. And let's be honest, you were never really his partner. You were more like his employee. The word hung in the air like poison. Employee. I don't mean that in a bad way. You were essential to the company, obviously. But Derek needs someone who can stand beside him as an equal. Someone who understands the world he's building. Someone who can be a real partner, not just in business, but in life. That's me, Vicky. And I know it hurts right now, but eventually you'll see this is better for everyone. Better for everyone. Derek and I are in love. Real love. Not that codependent, transactional thing you two had where you were always working and never really connecting. We laugh together. We travel. We enjoy life. You were always so serious, so stressed. Derek deserves someone who makes him happy. I made him a billionaire. You invested in his company. That's not the same as making him who he is. Derek would have succeeded with or without you, Vicky. The universe just used you as a vehicle to get him where he needed to be. Something inside me cracked. Not broke. Cracks suggest something that can be repaired. This was a calcification, a hardening of something soft into something diamond hard. Congratulations on your marriage, Diane, I said, my voice flat. I hope you got a prenup. That's mean. No, Diane. What's mean is fucking your sister's fiancé for 6 months. What's mean is planning a wedding in secret while pretending to care about my life over our weekly lunches. What's mean is calling his ring a transactional thing when I funded his dreams with my dead mother's life insurance money. But sure, I'm the mean one for wishing you had protected yourself legally. I hung up. Then I called Derek. It went to voicemail. I called again. Voicemail. On the third call, he answered. Vic, I'm sorry, he said immediately. I was going to tell you myself. I swear I was. I just needed to find the right time. When would have been the right time, Derek? Before or after you married my sister? I know you're upset. Upset? I'm holding a positive pregnancy test, Derek. I was going to tell you tonight. Over the birthday dinner you forgot about. While wearing the engagement ring you apparently forgot existed. Silence. Heavy, suffocating silence. Then you're pregnant. 10 weeks. I found out this morning. Surprise. Vic, Jesus, I don't know what to say. How about I'm sorry for destroying your life? That would be a start. I never meant to hurt you. Things with Diane just happened. We tried to stay away from each other, but the connection was too strong. And you and I, Vic, we haven't been really together for months. You know that. We've been roommates who occasionally sleep together, not partners. Roommates. In the apartment I helped furnish. In the life I helped build. That's not fair. I built this company. I'm the one who had the vision, who took the risks. With my money. Money I paid back 10 times over. Your stock options are worth millions, Victoria. You got your investment back plus returns that most people never see in their lifetimes. You should be thanking me, not thanking you. For what? For marrying my sister? For lying to me for 6 months? For making me believe we had a future together? We did have a future. And then it ended. That's how relationships work. People grow apart. I grew in one direction, you grew in another. Diane and I just fit better. She understands the lifestyle, the pressure, the expectations. She doesn't make me feel guilty for succeeding. I never made you feel guilty, didn't you? Every time I had to attend a gala or a networking event, you would make some comment about playing the part or schmoozing with the elite. You resented my success, Vic. Diane celebrates it. I stood in our apartment, my apartment, legally, since my name was on the lease and felt something die inside me. You're rewriting history, I said quietly. You're rewriting our entire relationship to justify what you did. I'm being honest. Maybe for the first time, we were good together when we were building something. But once we had built it, we didn't know how to just be. Diane and I, we know how to be. What about the baby, Derek? Another long silence. Are you sure it's mine? The question was so unexpected, so cruel, that I actually laughed. Wow. Okay. So that's who you are now. I'm just asking. We haven't exactly been active lately. We had sex 3 weeks ago, Derek, after the board meeting. You'd had too much scotch and I was exhausted, and it was mechanical and sad, but it happened. And yes, I'm sure it's yours, because unlike you, I don't sleep around on my partner. I didn't sleep around. I fell in love with my sister. While still engaged to me, while living in my apartment, while running a company I helped build with my mother's life insurance money. But sure, let's call it love. What do you want from me, Vic? An apology? Fine. I'm sorry. I'm sorry I fell in love with someone else. I'm sorry I didn't handle this better. I'm sorry about the timing, but I'm not sorry about Diane. She's my wife now. That's not changing. And the baby? We can work something out. Custody arrangements, child support, whatever you need. I'll take care of it. I always take care of my obligations. Obligations. Our child was an obligation. Get out, I said. What? Get out of my apartment. Tonight. Pack your things and leave. You're not welcome here anymore. Vic, be reasonable. It's almost midnight. Where am I supposed to go? I don't care. Call your wife. I'm sure Diane has room in whatever penthouse you've been hiding her in. The lease is in both our names. No, it's not. I signed the lease before we moved in together. You're not on it, which means legally, you're a guest, and I'm asking you to leave. Fine. His voice went cold. I'll send someone for my things tomorrow. But Victoria, you're making a mistake. We could have handled this like adults. Now you're just being vindictive. Vindictive would be calling your investors and telling them the truth about who really built CT Quantum. Vindictive would be going to the press about how you married into my family while embezzling my contributions. This is just me taking out the trash. I hung up and blocked his number. Then I sat on the floor of my apartment and let myself fall apart. The next 3 weeks were a blur of lawyers, accountants, and realizations that kept getting worse. My stock options in CT Quantum, they vested over 4 years, and I had only been granted them 18 months ago, which meant I could exercise options worth about $2.1 million substantial, but a fraction of what they would be worth if I stayed until full vesting. But I couldn't stay. The thought of walking into that office, of seeing Derek, of pretending everything was fine, made me physically ill. My lawyer, a sharp woman named Patricia Chen, no relation, laid out my options over coffee in her downtown office. The good news is you can exercise what's vested and walk away. The bad news is Connecticut has a 4-year vesting schedule, standard in tech, and there's no acceleration clause for personal circumstances. What if I had died? I asked. Then your estate would get nothing. Welcome to startup equity. It's designed to trap you. Can I sue him? For, I don't know, emotional distress? Fraud? Fraud would be hard to prove unless you can show he intentionally deceived you about the nature of your relationship for financial gain. Emotional distress requires demonstrable damages beyond, my feelings are hurt. Victoria, I know this feels catastrophically unfair, but from a legal standpoint, he didn't do anything illegal. Immoral? Absolutely. Actionable? Probably not. So he just gets away with it. Not entirely. You're entitled to exercise your options. You're entitled to keep the apartment since it's in your name. And regarding the pregnancy, if you decide to keep it, you're entitled to child support based on his income, which is substantial. If I decided to keep it, that was the question that kept me up at night. I was 32, single, pregnant with the child of a man who had just married my sister. I had about $2.1 million in pre-tax stock options, an apartment I couldn't afford the maintenance on, and a career that had evaporated the moment I became Derek's bitter ex. 3 days after the confrontation, I started spotting. By the 4th day, I was in the emergency room, and a kind doctor with sad eyes was telling me I had miscarried. These things happen, she said gently. About 25% of known pregnancies end in miscarriage, often in the first trimester. It's not your fault. But it felt like my fault. Like my body had known what my mind refused to accept. There was no future here. No family. No happily ever after. Just loss. I spent 2 weeks in a fog. sleeping 14 hours a day, ignoring calls, living on seamless delivery and the kind of numbness that comes from catastrophic loss. It was Rachel who snapped me out of it. She showed up at my apartment on a Saturday morning with bagels, coffee, and no patience for my wallowing. "Okay, pity party is over," she announced, barging in. "We need to talk about your next move." "My next move is to exercise my options and disappear." "Disappear where?" "I don't know. Somewhere Derek and Diane aren't. Somewhere I can pretend the last 3 years didn't happen. That's called running away." So you're Victoria Chen? You don't run away. You fight. There's nothing to fight for, Rach. He won. They won. I lost everything. Rachel set down her coffee and pulled out her laptop. "Not everything. Do you remember signing anything when you first invested in Derek? An LLC agreement. Standard stuff. And you've read it recently? Why would I? It doesn't matter anymore. Humor me." She opened a PDF. "Because I did some digging with a lawyer friend of mine, and there are some interesting clauses in here." She turned the laptop toward me, highlighting a section in the original Castellano Technologies LLC operating agreement from December 2018. "In the event of dissolution of personal relationship between members within 5 years of company founding, the member who provided initial capital investment shall retain rights to foundational intellectual property developed prior to external funding." I read it twice. "I don't remember this," Derek's lawyer added it. "Probably boilerplate protection in case you two broke up early and he wanted to make sure you couldn't claim ownership. But here's the thing, it works both ways. If your relationship dissolved within 5 years, you retain rights to the foundational IP, but we got external funding in 2019. That was before the relationship dissolved." "Yes, but the IP developed before that, funding the core algorithms, the original patents, the quantum-inspired architecture that was all conceived and developed with your initial investment. Between December 2018 and August 2019, my mind started racing. The foundation of everything CT Quantum is built on. Exactly. Now Derek would argue that it's been improved upon, that the company has evolved beyond those initial concepts. And he would be right. But you have legal claim to the foundational patents, which means I could license them, or sell them, or pull them out from under him entirely. I stared at the screen, at the clause I had never noticed, at the loophole that might be my salvation. "I need a different lawyer," I said. "One who specializes in IP law." Rachel smiled. "Already made you an appointment. Monday at 9 a.m. The IP lawyer's name was David Lim, and he was a shark in a 3-piece suit. "This is fascinating," he said, reviewing the documents I had brought. "And rare. Most founders don't include dissolution clauses because they assume the company will outlive any personal relationships." Derek's lawyer was being thorough, but he may have been too thorough. "Can I actually pull the patents? It's complicated. You can't just yank them without cause that would trigger breach of contract clauses. But you can renegotiate the licensing terms. Currently, you've licensed this IP to CT Quantum in perpetuity for nothing, apparently. There's no licensing fee structure. Because I was an owner. Or I thought I was. Right. But legally you're not. You're an options holder with no voting rights and no board seat. Which means you're actually licensing valuable IP to a company for free, which is not a normal arm's-length business transaction. So what do I do?" David leaned back in his chair. "You send them a formal notice that the licensing terms need to be renegotiated. You give them 90 days to come to the table. If they don't, you can terminate the license. And if I terminate it, then CT Quantum can't use the foundational technology that their entire platform is built on, which would effectively kill the company. They would sue me. Absolutely. And it would be ugly. But you would have leverage. They would be forced to either pay you fair market value for the IP license or buy you out entirely. What's fair market value for IP that's the foundation of a $2.3 billion company?" David smiled. "Let's find out." Over the next month, I worked with David and a team of forensic accountants to build our case. We documented everything. My initial $287,000 investment and how it was used exclusively for IP development. The original code I had written for the proof of concept. The patent applications I had helped draft. The technical architecture documents that proved the core technology was developed before external funding. Email chains showing my contributions to every major technical decision. We also discovered something interesting. The IP I technically owned wasn't just the original quantum algorithms. It included several key improvements I had developed in late 2019 and early 2020 improvements that I had documented in my personal notes, but that had been rolled into company patents without proper attribution. This is actually better than I thought, David said during one of our strategy sessions. You're not just claiming ownership of the original concept. You have legitimate claims to some of the most valuable patents in their current portfolio. How much leverage do I have? If you forced a valuation, conservatively, $80 million, but that's in a negotiated settlement. If you actually pulled the licenses and they had to rebuild, it could cost them hundreds of millions in 2 years of development time. They would be finished. I don't want to destroy the company, I said. I just want what's fair. Then let's send them a notice and see if Derek wants to negotiate. We sent the formal licensing renegotiation notice on November 1st, 2021. Derek called me 3 hours later. I let it go to voicemail. He called 6 more times. I blocked his number. The next day, I received a letter from CT Quantum's legal counsel, delivered via messenger to my apartment. Miss Chen, we are in receipt of your notice regarding intellectual property licensing. CT Quantum categorically rejects your claims of ownership over any company IP. All technology developed during your employment was work for hire and belongs exclusively to CT Quantum. Any attempt to disrupt company operations or interfere with our IP rights will be met with swift legal action, including claims for damages and injunctive relief. We suggest you consult with competent legal counsel before proceeding with this frivolous claim. Regards, Jonathan Fisher, General Counsel, CT Quantum. Work for hire, I said to David. I was never an employee. I was an investor. Exactly. This letter actually helps us. They're claiming you were an employee, which means they're admitting you had no ownership stake beyond options, which means the IP you developed before becoming an employee is yours. So what now? Now we file a formal complaint and we make it public. The complaint was filed on November 15th, 2021 in New York Supreme Court. Victoria Chen v. CT Quantum, Incorporated, and Derek Castellano. The filing outlined my claims: ownership of foundational IP valued at $80 million, misappropriation of IP developed with personal investment, breach of fiduciary duty by Derek as managing member of the original LLC, unjust enrichment. We also filed for an emergency injunction to prevent CT Quantum from using the disputed patents until the case was resolved. The tech press had a field day. TechCrunch. CT Quantum founder sued by ex-fiancé over IP rights. Bloomberg. $1 billion breakup. Victoria Chen claims ownership of CT Quantum's core technology. The information. Love, patents, and betrayal. Inside the CT Quantum legal battle, Derek's public statement was predictable. These claims are baseless and appear motivated by personal animus rather than legal merit. CT Quantum will vigorously defend its IP rights and expects to prevail quickly in court. This appears to be an attempt by a disgruntled former employee to extort money from a successful company. Disgruntled former employee. He was still pushing that narrative. But something unexpected happened. People started talking. A former CT Quantum engineer posted on Blind anonymously. Of course, everyone inside the company knows Victoria built the core tech. Derek was the face, but she was the brain. This lawsuit isn't frivolous, it's overdue. Another engineer followed. I worked directly with Victoria for 18 months. She wrote at least 60% of the foundational code. Derek couldn't code his way out of a paper bag. He's a salesman who's been taking credit for her work since day one. The narrative started shifting. Discovery in the lawsuit revealed things I had never known. Derek had been in communication with Diane since June 2021, not August like she had claimed. Their first messages were from my birthday party that year, when I had been too busy talking to investors to notice my fiancé flirting with my sister. The messages were damning. Derek wrote, "I can't stop thinking about our conversation. You're right, Victoria is brilliant but exhausting. Sometimes I just want to have fun." Diane replied, "You deserve someone who celebrates your success instead of resenting it." Derek asked, "Is that someone you?" Diane said, "Could be, if you're brave enough." By July, they were sleeping together. By August, they were planning a future. By September, Derek had already consulted a lawyer about how to end our engagement without triggering any clauses in our contracts that might benefit me. The lawyer had advised him to claim the relationship had ended months earlier, to make it seem like a gradual drift rather than an affair. To characterize me as an employee, not a partner. To minimize any claims I might have. This is premeditated, David said, showing me the discovery documents. He didn't just fall in love with your sister. He planned this. He consulted lawyers about how to minimize his liability before he even told you it was over. I should have been devastated. Instead, I felt something else. Clarity. This wasn't a romance gone wrong. This was a calculated extraction. Derek had gotten what he needed from me. Money, technical expertise, legitimacy. And then he had found someone who offered what he wanted. Social status, beauty, a partner who wouldn't question his narrative of self-made success. And Diane? Diane had always wanted what I had. Not because she valued it, but because I had it. 3 weeks into discovery, CT Quantum's lawyers requested a mediation meeting. We met in a conference room in Midtown Manhattan. Derek was there with Jonathan Fisher and 2 other attorneys. Diane was notably absent. Derek looked terrible. He had lost weight, and there were dark circles under his eyes. Good. Victoria, he started, trying for warmth. This has gotten out of hand. We built something beautiful together. Let's not destroy it over hurt feelings. Hurt feelings, I repeated. Is that what you think this is about? I know I handled things badly. I know I hurt you. But taking down the company we built together? That hurts everyone, our employees, our investors, our customers. Is that really what you want? What I want is what's legally mine. Jonathan Fisher cleared his throat. Miss Chen, we're prepared to offer a settlement. CT Quantum will pay you $5 million for a full release of any IP claims, plus acceleration of your remaining stock options. At current valuation, you would be walking away with approximately $12 million total. That's a substantial return on your initial investment. Your client is worth $800 million personally, David countered. The company is worth $2.3 billion, and you're offering my client who built the foundational technology $12 million? She was adequately compensated for her contributions. She was systematically minimized, excluded from equity she had earned, and then discarded when she had served her purpose. We're not interested in $12 million. What are you interested in? Derek asked, looking directly at me. I had thought about this moment for weeks. What did I want? To destroy him? To take back everything he had stolen? To make him feel the way I had felt standing in my apartment, holding a pregnancy test while Instagram informed me my life was over? I want the truth, I said. I want you to publicly acknowledge my contributions to CT Quantum. I want my name on the patents I developed. I want fair compensation for the IP I created. And I want an apology. You want me to admit that you built my company? Our company. I want you to admit it was our company, not yours. That's all. Tell the truth. Compensate me fairly, and I'll sign a release. Derek laughed. Actually laughed. Do you know what that would do to my reputation? To the company's valuation? Investors believe in me, Victoria. In my vision? If I start saying, actually, my ex-girlfriend did most of the technical work, the stock tanks. So your reputation is worth more than the truth? In this industry? Yes. Absolutely. Perception is everything. You know that. Then we'll see you in court. I stood up. David followed. Wait, Derek said. Victoria, please. Let's be reasonable. $20 million. Final offer, but no public acknowledgement. That's the deal breaker. Then we have no deal. 2 days after the failed mediation, I got a call from an unexpected source. Marcus Webb, Derek's COO. Miss Chen, we haven't met formally, but I've been following your lawsuit with interest. I wonder if you would be willing to meet me for coffee. Off the record. Why would I do that? Because I have information that might help your case. And because I'm tired of working for a narcissist who treats people like disposable assets. We met at a cafe in Chelsea. Marcus looked nervous, constantly glancing over his shoulder. I'm probably ending my career by doing this, he said, sliding a flash drive across the table. But what Derek did to you, it's not the first time. It's just the most visible. What's on this? Internal company documents, emails, financial records. Proof that Derek systematically minimized your contributions in investor presentations. Proof that he lied about who developed key technologies. Proof that he paid himself a $10 million bonus last quarter while delaying your option vesting by restructuring your employment agreement without telling you. I stared at the flash drive. Why are you giving me this? Because I made a mistake taking this job. I thought Derek was a visionary. Turns out he's just good at taking credit for other people's vision. And because he hesitated, because he's planning to do something worse. Worse than what he's already done? He's in talks to sell CT Quantum to Maverick Systems for $4 billion. The deal closes in 60 days. Once it does, your lawsuit becomes meaningless. The acquiring company would indemnify Derek personally, and you would be fighting a conglomerate with infinite legal resources instead of a startup. My blood ran cold. He's selling before the lawsuit resolves? He's escaping. He'll walk away with nearly $1 billion. Your claims will die in the acquisition, and you'll get nothing. Why are you telling me this? Because I have a daughter, and I keep thinking about what I would want someone to do if she were in your position. I would want someone to help her fight back. Pause this video right now and leave a comment. Have you ever disappeared on someone who betrayed you? What happened next? Your story might be featured in our next video, because what Victoria does with this information, the way she transforms from victim to predator, it's the stuff of legend. Hit the subscribe button to get notification on what Victoria did next.